So hi, everyone. My name's Kristen Fletcher. I'm the Programs and Community Engagement Coordinator at the Haley Public Library. Tonight, our presentation is Create a Trout-Friendly Yard with Wood River Land Trust Restoration Specialist Ryan Santo. But before I introduce him, I always like to share a couple of books that we have here at the library on the subject at hand. And one of these books is, let's see if I can hold it right. One of these books is, which one is this? Pretty Tough Plants. 135 Resilient Water Smart Choices for a Beautiful Garden. It's got a lot of great information on it. And this one is Dryland Gardening. Plants that survive and thrive in tough conditions. So we'll be talking about reducing water and still having a beautiful yard. So I hope those are good resources for you, and we have them here at the library. So it's my pleasure to introduce Ryan Santo. He is the restoration specialist for the Wood River Land Trust. Originally, he came from New Jersey and has spent the last 14 years monitoring endangered salmon and steelhead populations in the Snake and Upper Columbia River basins. He graduated with a bachelor degree in fisheries and aquaculture from State University of New York, Cobleskill, and he's worked throughout the Northwest with the Idaho Department of Fish and Game, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and most recently with the Nez Perce tribe. At the Land Trust, Ryan focuses on implementing water conservation and habitat rehabilitation projects. He led the recently completed mile-long Howard Preserve River Restoration Project, which will mitigate flooding on private property and enhance floodplain and natural fluvial processes. So please join me in a warm virtual Zoom welcome. Thanks so much, Ryan, for joining us here tonight. And I will now mute myself and turn it over to you. Thank you again.
Well, thanks for having me. Happy Earth Day, everyone. That was a great introduction. I was going to say half of that stuff on this first slide, so thank you, Kristen. But yeah, I'm Ryan Santo with the Wood River Land Trust Restoration Specialist, and I do focus on restoration projects, mostly on the Big Wood River. But another great thing I get to do is to run the Wood River Land Trust Trout Friendly program. So what is trout friendly? And you know what, we get this question a lot. And the program was created in 2007 by the Wood River Land Trust. And since then, there's been several other cities that have adopted the trout friendly program to implement in their cities, or something like our program. Out in Jackson, Wyoming, they adopted pretty much word for word the best management practices that we talk about here in the Wood River Valley. And also in Bozeman, they're looking to do something similar. And really, the Trout Friendly program is an educational outreach program focusing on three things. And I think, you know, the current events or what we're observing happening here in our valley, these three items are very important. And it's mostly due to climate change. And, you know, people talk about how climate change is coming, but I think here in our valley, we're already seeing the effects of climate change. We're seeing longer fire seasons. We're seeing just last year, the low flows in Silver Creek had led to reduced oxygen levels. And that's causing stress on fish, you know, which overall is just going to reduce population of salamanids in our creeks and rivers. And we're also seeing it with you know, irrigation users like farmers. This year it's looking like it'll be very similar to last year as far as snowpack and water content. And they're not going to be able to have a full crop season this year, which affects them as well. So really what we try to do with the idea that, you know, the Big Wood River is very connected to its aquifer or the groundwater underneath. So the idea is that whatever you do at your landscape really affects the health of the Big Wood River. And the three things that we focus on is reducing water use, reduce or eliminate the use of synthetic fertilizers or herbicides, and try to include or incorporate native or drought tolerant plants. And native plants, not only are they drought tolerant, use less water, and more resilient during drought periods like we're seeing now, but they also attract more wildlife as well. So there's really two components of the program. We have trout-friendly members, and then we also have trout-friendly partners. And if you sign up as a member, you can go on our website or just give us a call and we could talk about the program. But myself or another staff member would do a site visit, make sure that you're following our best management practices, and also provide recommendation and education information to make your yard more trout friendly. You'll be getting a monthly trout friendly newsletter. We do this in the spring, summer, and fall months. And in there, we try to provide articles about local, regional, national issues regarding, some of the things that trout friendly program tries to do, like reducing water. And also in that newsletter, we try to provide DIY projects that you could do at home. We try to make them kid friendly, get the kids involved, get them out in the yard, get them outside, get them thinking about how they could become trout friendly and how that benefits the environment around them. And then also you get a trout friendly yard sign. And really the benefit of the trout friendly yard sign is getting the word out about the program. The yard sign was this right here, this image right here is the trout friendly yard sign. And it's kind of an eye-grabbing sign. People drive by it or your neighbor sees it, what's that? And then you start talking about it. And now you're spreading, kind of the educational outreach to other neighbors. And that's really how the program has grown since 2007, and also doing talks like this. And the great thing about signing up as a member, the cost is free. And then for partner benefits, we have partners that are landscaping companies, and we also have partners like that are municipalities like the city of Haley. But really the benefits focuses on landscaping companies. So here at the Land Trust, we get a lot of calls like, hey, I want to have my yard to be trout friendly. Who should I use? Well, we always refer, people on our partner list, because these are folks that know how to create a trout friendly yard, follow our best management practices. So we refer them to those folks. And then if a landscaping company is maintaining someone's yard, we could put the trout friendly sign there and have their company logo. And then we do advertising for our partners through our quarterly Land Trust newsletters and email e-blast list out to our membership. And so really the benefit for partners is enhanced advertising. And the cost is anywhere from $100 to $200 a year, depending on the size of the company. So here are the kind of the basic best management practices that members have to follow to be part of the trout friendly program. So really, again, the three topics: conserve water, reduce chemical use, and then native drought tolerant plants. And these are all really simple things that we could all do. Try to avoid watering during the hottest part of the day, generally around 10 in the morning to 5 at night, or 5 in the evening. This is going to reduce evaporation while you're irrigating and allow more of that moisture for your plants or your lawn. Try to water appropriately for your soil conditions. And I'll talk more about what that means, but really what you want to do is try to reduce watering daily and try to really, just twice a week, or if your landscape is really trout friendly, maybe just once a week. A simple thing to reduce chemicals is raise your mower blade to 3 inches. Don't cut your grass so low to the ground to 1 inch or ½ an inch. Allowing your grass to grow 3 inches, it becomes more resilient. We'll talk a little bit more why that is, but it also drowns out or reduces the chance of weeds establishing. And instead of broadcast spraying, try to spot spray. Just try to really concentrate the use of your chemical use to the plants or weeds that you want to remove. And we'll talk more later about some alternatives to using synthetic chemicals. And like I talked about before, try to incorporate native drought-tolerant plants. And again, native plants will bring in more wildlife and also reduce water. So it's just kind of an added benefit as well. One of the great initiatives that the Trout Friendly program did was this creation of the Water Conservation Landscaping Guidelines. It's kind of a long one, but it's a really important document. It provides a lot of DIY tasks, and I'll go over this tonight with you folks, and provides a lot of simple DIY tasks to reduce water and just make your landscape more trout friendly. And this was created from our partners, landscaping companies and municipalities. It was adopted by all municipalities in the Wood River Valley and Blaine County as recommendations in 2018. And also another product of this initiative was the creation of a drought tolerant plant list. And this is a great list because it breaks it down by trees, shrubs, and grasses. So how do you create a trout friendly yard? And really where you should start is your soil. I think it's a good thing to think of your soil as a living organism. If you're using pesticides, synthetic pesticides, you're really hampering the health of your soil. And here's one of these DIY tasks that you could do with your family, and especially kid-friendly. Get them out digging in the yard, get a little muddy, and do this soil texture test. So what you do is just fill up about half the jar with soil, fill it up with water, shake it up a bunch, let it sit. And as you see down here, can you guys see my cursor, Kristen? Great. So as you see down here, your soil starts to stratify. And the first one to do it first is sand, and then you have a silt layer, and then you have a clay layer. And this really gives you a great idea, and it determines a couple of things. It could determine what your water cycle will be. So here in this example, we have 63% sand, so a real porous type of soil. So if you're going to be watering for, let's say, 20 minutes at a time, most of that water is going to sink down and go past the root zone, and you're really just wasting water. So knowing this, you might want to just water at shorter intervals. Say, if you have really sandy soil, maybe just 2-3 minutes, and then stop, and then wait, and then do another 2-3 minutes, instead of doing the 20 minutes at a time. And then also doing the soil texture test, it would help determine your soil health. So really what you want is equally about a third each of clay, silt, and sand in your soil. So doing this test, you might, like in this example, you probably want to add some kind of organic compost to it to help hold more water. And then here is a link to do a soil texture test. There's many links out there. If you just type in soil composition test or soil texture test, you'll find one that will work for you. Another simple thing that we can do is add compost. So soils with 25% compost holds 4 times more water. Very simple to do, sometimes relatively inexpensive, especially if you make your own compost. And it's really, you follow these general rules. And for turf and for shrubs, you want a 1-to-3 ratio. So for turf, you want 6 inches of soil depth at a 1-to-3 ratio. And then for shrubs and flower beds, you want about 12 inches of soil at a 1-to-3 ratio, which works to about 4 inches of compost you want into that shrubs or flower bed. A pretty simple thing we could do as well for our plant beds is add mulch. Keeps plants cool, prevents soil crusting, and minimizes evaporation, and also controls weed growth. And for shrubs, shrub beds and tree beds, or just trees, really want to use a minimum of 4 to 6 inches of mulch. And I really found this out the hard way. A couple of years ago, bought a cubic yard of mulch. I calculated it out. There's many calculators that you could use online to figure out how much you need. I bought a cubic yard, did all my beds, probably needed a little bit more. I probably only got about 2 inches, and weeds did start to come out pretty quickly. So I would definitely recommend trying to get to that 6 inch, if not 6 to 7 inches of mulch. And then for trees, you want to place the mulch. You don't want to put it right up onto the trunk of the tree. You want to kind of spread it out away from the trunk, but extend it out to the drip line. So what is a drip line? And I get this question quite a bit. And you could see on the right graphic down here, I think not many people realize this, but tree roots, they don't go as deep. They may get the ones that are right under the trunk, to use as their support roots. But most of the roots that are used to get water and nutrients are spread out at really shallow and spread out thin. And you could see where the drip line is, which is just an extension of how far the branches and leaves go out. So as you could see in this photo on the left, this is how you want to properly set up your irrigation for your trees. We'll talk a little bit about this in some of the more later on slides, but you really want to use drip irrigation as well for your trees. So irrigation for lawns, and this is where I was talking about, talking about your water cycle and how that really affects the root systems of your grass. So here in this graphic to the right, this is watering deep and infrequent. So what that means by deep, so let's say you're watering 20 minutes for your lawn, but you're only doing it once every 3 days. And then to the right, you can see, you're maybe watering, let's say 5 minutes, but you're doing it every day. So the results of those two techniques are, for the deep and frequent, you have a really robust root system. You also have a deeper root system, which is going to lead to actually you saving more water, because the roots will be able to go through the whole column right through here of taking in water, where here you're going to have to water constantly to keep this upper level wet so the grass can start growing. And that's where also comes into play is try not to cut your grass any less than 3 inches. So if you whack down your grass down to 1 inch or a ½ inch, grass wants to be big, and what it's going to want to grow faster. So what that does is increase its water consumption. And one important thing to note about this is not something you want to decide to start doing. In other words, change your water cycle from shallow frequent to deep and infrequent in the middle of July. This is something you want to start now. You really want to train your grass to deep and infrequent water cycles. If you do it in July and you have this root system here, a lot of that water is going to start going down deep. And you could see here, the root system is not really capable of taking in that water. So then you're going to start seeing your grass starting to turn brown. And it's just kind of a natural inclination is when your grass is brown, you water more. So you really want to start early and, right when you're going to start to irrigate to really train your grass. And then another simple thing to do is leave your grass clippings when you mow your yard. This kind of acts as mulch, helps with water retention, but it also helps with not having weeds established. And another thing you could do is add a rain or soil moisture sensor. Today, these sensors are compatible with pretty much any control unit that you use for your irrigation system. And I'm sure we've all seen it. It'll be dumping rain and you're driving around and you see folks' irrigation systems on. So it's frustrating, but it's a really simple measure to help reduce that and reduce your water use. Another thing you could do is a cup test. So this is another fun DIY thing you could do with your family, your kids. You could buy these cups specifically for this test, or you could just use Dixie cups and fill them up with an equal layer of sand to anchor them down. And you lay out these cups in a grid pattern. and then you turn on your irrigation system. And then you do that for maybe about 5 minutes. And then you look at each cup and you could see at the certain level of water where you're not being efficient or where you're not watering your lawn evenly. And this could, by doing this test, could be you determine a couple of things. Like maybe you have an obstruction on one of your spray heads. We start planting beds in the spring, and then those plants start getting maybe bigger than what we thought. So now they're obstructing the spray head. That's something you can notice. And then you might determine that you have to switch zones, which we'll go into a little bit more. Maybe you have to add a sprinkler head. Here it is. As you can see here, we have some, dry areas. Maybe you would see in these cups, maybe there's, way less water as in some of these cups back here. And, most spray heads are adjustable. Most of them have just a flathead screw on top. So you could extend the length of the spray, or you could shorten it, which really would go a long way with, having a more efficient water system. And again, I think a lot of people, when they see these brown spots, they're like, oh, I got to water more. But, you could just do this simple test and, or maybe just walk through your yard while the sprinklers are on and see if there's any obstruction to your spray heads and adjust accordingly. And then another thing to think about is, irrigation zones. So for any time a shrub or tree beds, you always want to use drip. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but drip is the most efficient way to water plants. And you also want to determine zones by water needs. So for example, if you have a really shady part of your yard compared to another part that gets a lot of sun, maybe you want to split that zone. Maybe it was one zone and then split it, because obviously the shaded part is going to, require less water than the part that gets more sun. And then if you're doing a remodel of your landscape, try to convert your lawn to drip irrigation. And I think probably the way most of our irrigation systems are set up, they're probably about 40 to 60% efficient. If you really follow best industry practices, you could probably get a lawn that uses spray heads up to around 80% efficient, but installing drip irrigation will get you 90% efficient for watering your lawn. And then here's some other trout-friendly tips. Let's say you want to build a fence for privacy. Instead of using lumber or other artificial material, try using more natural materials, like building a row of chokecherry or what's pictured up here, Rocky Mountain juniper. This provides great privacy, but it also provides some habitat for wildlife. You'll definitely attract more birds using Rocky Mountain juniper than you will with a yard built from lumber. Another great one is using a rain barrel system. I think probably most people's rain barrels this spring is pretty dry, which is not common, but it's a really great way to capture water. And you can buy kits online. There's a lot of links to build your own rain barrel. And, mostly these are used to water, plant beds around the house. And then this last one, I talked with a trout-friendly member a couple years ago, and while they're waiting for hot water to wash dishes or to take a shower, they have a bucket and they just fill up that bucket while they're waiting for hot water. And they said they don't use any other water to irrigate their plant beds, only water that is used while they're waiting for hot water. So that's a way to definitely be more water efficient. And I get this question a lot. So what are some alternatives to, Roundup or synthetic pesticides? So Just in the last couple of years, there's been a lot more organic herbicides or pesticides on the market. But the ones I use is a company called Adios. You could also make your own, use a vinegar solution. And this is real simple. It's 1 gallon vinegar, 1 cup salt, and 1 teaspoon of dish soap. And really the dish soap is just used as an adhesive to the plant you want to remove. And you could also buy the vinegar solution that has a higher concentration compared to the vinegar that you would just buy at a grocery store. And that's all available online. And also this vinegar solution, if you don't want to make it yourself, you can buy online as well. But really, you know, one of the better alternatives, but more labor intensive, is hand pull. And the one thing I would recommend is that you really want to start pulling weeds now. And right when they start coming up, that's when you want to pull them. Because once you let them go to a more mature stage, they might already get to seeding, which you're going to be pulling more weeds next year. But also it takes more solution, more application to remove the weed when they're larger. So really start by removing those weeds as soon as you can. So if you want to become a Trout Friendly member, you could sign up onto our website. Here's a link here. We have a web form on there. We also have a PDF that you could print out and fill out, either mail to us or just drop it off at our office. And then always, we like to thank our Trout Friendly partners. If you have any landscaping needs this year, please use our partner list on the left. These are companies, like I mentioned before, that will follow our Trout Friendly best management practices. And then on the right are municipalities and other organizations that we've partnered with over the years on some Trout Friendly initiatives. So I hope the water conservation landscaping guidelines and the plant list will be emailed out to you after this. I just pulled subsets out of that, and just, when you read through that document, there's really just some simple things that you can do to help reduce water use and synthetic pesticides in your landscape. So from there, I guess we'll open it up to questions.
Ryan, before we dive into questions, there was one thing that I forgot to mention, is that we are recording this talk, and I will do some light editing and then post it on the library's website. You just go on the website, there's a drop down for library programs, and then there's another link to our archive program. So you'll be able to see and hear this complete talk. I should be able to get it done tomorrow or maybe Monday. So it should be available pretty soon. And what was the other thing? Yes, I will be sending out the water conservation landscaping guidelines as well as the plant list. So that will be, like I say, Friday or Monday. So just look for that. So for questions, we don't have any questions at this point in the chat. We've got a nice size group. Whoops, here comes one now. If you're inheriting a conventional yard, like when you move to a new location, can you retrain the lawn for trout-friendly management? And how would you do that?
Right. Yeah. Yes, you can. It may take longer than just one irrigation season to do so. So you may have some stressed lawn, but again, you really want to start now. I think I've been seeing the landscaping companies turn on irrigation systems this week. And so, yeah, you want to start now. I've talked with some of our partners about this, and they said, if you inherit or you just buy or move into a new place and they have been overwatering, it may take a couple of years or a couple of irrigation seasons. It's definitely not going to work overnight. So you might see some stressed lawn. I would just suggest continue doing that, and then eventually you'll have a lawn that's more resilient to less water.
Ryan, I have a question kind of following up on that. I live, this is a question for me. Where I live, my soil is extremely high in clay, so it compacts insanely well. My lawn itself is, I have a small lawn, but it's as hard as a rock.
Right.
What do you think about doing those plugs? There's a way to come in and there's a machine that takes those little plugs out of the soil. And I've heard that that allows the water to
Right.
kind of go down in. Do you have any advice about that?
Yeah, I've heard of that. It definitely is supposed to add for more aeration, for more water drainage. Aeration and water drainage also coincides with soil health. You'll have more organism. But I would suggest start working in some compost into that grass.
Hmm.
And it might take a couple of seasons to do, because you know you could go drastic and just rip it all out and start over, but we don't want to do that most of the time. But yeah, just I think you could do the plugs, but also just start working in some compost into that grass, and it'll start to break down and add to better soil health.
Thank you. For some reason or other, I'm having technological problems myself. Someone just posted a question in the chat, but I actually cannot access my chat. I'm going to try one. Oh, there it is. Yay. So Eleanor asks, I was told there is a water conservation attachment that is internet connected, but it sounds like it uses weather rain reports. Are you familiar with that, and does that work?
Right. And so yeah, the short answer is yes. I think there's the one thing you want to consider is one of the examples I heard about this is that the weather reporting station was down for this one app was down in Peekaboo. So we folks that lived here, it could be dumping rain and catch them and be bright and sunny and haily. So that's the one I think caveat I would look into, see where that weather station is. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, mobile apps are kind of the way to go. They could reduce the need for rain sensors. You could be at work and look outside and you see it raining, just go on to the app and delay your water system. So I definitely, those web tools are definitely become more user friendly, and also a better way to become more water efficient.
Thank you. Amy asks if there are certain varieties of grasses that are more trout friendly than others.
There are. So here at our office, we planted, there's many drought tolerant mixes. There's a lot of native grasses. You could buy the Scottish link fescue seed mix. I actually just bought some the other day from Web Landscaping. So yeah, there's definitely blends that are geared towards being drought tolerant. There's also blends that are native to this area. And there's also blends like at another one of our houses that we used for employee housing, we kind of used a mix of cool, more of a shaded drought tolerant mix in one area, and then also just a regular drought tolerant mix. So there's really a lot of varieties out there, and yeah, I think you just have to figure out which one would work best at your, for your application.
Okay, thank you. And then Dick asks if you could recommend landscape architects that are knowledgeable in terms of converting grass to native landscapes.
Right. I think there's many talented landscape architects out there. Dean Hernandez, God, I can't think of his company now. He's just down just a block away from us. But Dean Hernandez does great work. Kelly Weston of Native Landscapes definitely focuses on providing, converting your landscape to a more native Rob King with Landwork Studios has been a great partner over the years. So yeah, I think those three, they're all the top of my list. Whitehead Landscaping, they've been one of our best partners, been there since the beginning. I definitely recommend Whitehead Landscaping. They also have their own organic compost for sale, so made locally. So I would definitely utilize them as well.
So just a follow on to that question, what questions would a homeowner ask a landscaping company or an architect to um, sort of get the conversation going in the right direction, you know, as a way that they could evaluate whether that person really is just saying yes to them or is actually quite knowledgeable about that conversion?
Yeah, I think going on their website, like I said, Whitehead Landscaping, they have a whole section of organic compost that they make themselves. Of course, native landscapes. Kelly Weston has done a lot of great work with that. I would ask some project examples that they've done in the past. That would give you a good idea. And really, yeah, just do a little bit of research like that, and definitely ask for project examples, because then you could actually see the finished product. I think the one thing, you go into designing, but sometimes it takes 1 to 3 years to really see that landscape bloom and pop and look really good, and and also doing it in a way where you're not using water. But kind of like to add on that, the first thing I would do before you even consult a landscape architect is really, what are the uses you want to see at your yard? Because certain drought tolerant mixes may not do so well for, like, you want a yard that you're going to be playing football with your kids. Some are better for more turf, some are better for more pasture applications. So before you even try to reach out to a landscape architect, I would, ask a couple of questions of yourselves. What would you like to see, and what are the uses that you're looking to do at your landscape?
So thank you, Ryan. I'll just mention a few of you arrived a little after we started, and Ryan said his presentation would be fairly short, with the idea that a lot of people would be asking specific questions about their landscape or their particular needs. So feel free to share your questions. Here they come in the chat.
Great.
Yeah. So Dick asks a question: do you have a forecast for future water costs?
I do not. That would something that you would have to ask the municipalities. I'm kind of unfamiliar as far as infrastructure needs. Usually municipalities, when they have to redo some of their water delivery systems or infrastructure, wastewater, that's when rates go up. So yeah, I'm familiar with that, and I would recommend contacting your municipality.
Okay, thank you. Bob says, we live in a condo and have a yard service that the association has used for years. We've seen sprays used and now have seen a couple of resident dogs actually get sick afterwards. We
Right.
asked what they were applying and were shocked by the list of herbicides and fungicides. Is our best solution to contact the landscaping companies on your partner list, or what would you suggest?
I talked with the HOA. So another thing that we've done with those water conservation landscaping guidelines, we've been able to incorporate them into whole HOAs as the CCNR. So they have to follow these water conservation landscaping guidelines. And this has been done at the Quigley development, and this has also been done at the Colorado Gulch development that's being built off of Broadford Road. So I would recommend reaching out to the HOA president. I would love to be available to do this presentation or go over the water conservation landscaping guidelines. We would love to have more HOAs following these guidelines. I think that's why they were built. I think we would probably get the most bang for our buck as far as water conservation throughout this valley by actually reaching out to HOAs. So I would definitely start with the HOA. With that being said, and Kristen, I'll send this as well. Part of the water conservation landscape and guidelines, we created a one-pager. And on the one side is a consolidated version of the guidelines in English, and on the other side it's in Spanish. So, you know, maybe just hand that to the guys who are working out in your landscape, because, you know, a lot of times they're doing what they were told, and, you know, they were told to have a nice green lawn and no weeds. So they're just spraying the heck out of it, and they just want to do a good job. And so maybe just, you know, handing those guidelines to them would really go a long way. Well,
Thank you. A question about your vinegar and salt mix. That seems like a pretty potent mix. How careful do you have to be when you're using it? And would that be effective on lots of little weeds that are coming up in a gravel driveway?
I think it'd be ideal for those little weeds in the gravel driveway. And you know, if it irritates your eyes, the 20% concentration, you could just use the ones that you can get, you know, from the grocery store. But you know, compared to, like, let's say Roundup, regardless of whatever mixture you use, you probably have to use more applications.
Okay.
They definitely work just as well, but again, you know, you have to use it probably just more frequently with Roundup. So yeah, I would make that suggestion. If it's irritable to your eyes or the smell, you know, just kind of use a lower concentration.
And would a person need to have a separate application tool to use for vinegar? I mean, I know we all do our best to rinse out, like, let's say we do use Roundup and we try to rinse it out very thoroughly and dry it out before we put it
Yeah.
away. Can we use this vinegar mix in that same container, or should we use two separate containers?
You know, that's a good question. And to be honest, I don't know. I just want to be honest with you. I guess, you know, to be safe, I would just recycle that Roundup container. I know, you know, if you are switching over, the Roundup usually has the big, you know, 2-gallon thing that you could pump and spray.
Mhm.
But I would just start new and use a new one.
Mm. And do you have any suggestions for getting rid of bindweed in lawn?
That's a tough one. And that one is very hard to. Again, you want to just try to get it early. Don't let it keep growing and reestablish and growing and growing. And you know, with that one, that's just a lot of manual labor. You could hit it hard, and you know, with Trout Friendly, you know, sometimes when you move into a new place, it's just weeds everywhere. Sometimes you just have to nuke it with some kind of synthetic, you know, pesticide. It's not ideal, but at least you get ahead of it in the future. You don't have to use it. It's not something we highly recommend, but sometimes when you inherit a landscape, that's, you know, one of the only things you can do. But again, you know, we don't really promote that, but you know, sometimes it's just what you have to do.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions. We have a small enough group that if you do have a question, we could certainly take them sort of live, if you will, if you wanted to unmute yourself, um, or take your video, you know, activate your video again, maybe have more of a interactive conversation. And while you're thinking about that, we do have one more question. Any suggestions for vole control?
Well, I wouldn't use the fire in the hole technique that started that fire Indian Creek. No offense to the folks who did that, but you know, it's just such a dry spring. I do not, have a great recommendation. Our partner list that you see up on the screen, these are folks that went to school, have degrees in this type of stuff. I would definitely recommend calling one of our trout friendly partners. Definitely try to recommend not using any kind of poisons or anything like that. Voles can definitely be an issue. Barn cats are great. But yeah, I just don't know enough about that to feel comfortable to give an actual recommendation other than I would contact one of our trout friendly partners.
Thank you. Amy adds that predatory birds like owls are great for reducing vole populations.
There you go.
And we do have a question about, do you have any suggestions for aphid control?
Right. Yeah. Especially if you have those aspen trees, and there's quite the symbiotic relationship between ants and aphids, which is quite amazing. But yeah, they cause havoc to your trees. One of the things you could try, and this isn't drought tolerant, but spraying off your leaves to knock out the aphids can sometimes really reduce it to a point where you don't have to use any kind of chemical application. I've also heard ladybugs could be a great kind of biotic or biological control. Ladybugs are a predator and would help knock back the aphid population as well.
One thing that I've heard too is planting an attractant plant that would draw more aphids to that plant, something that they really like. I know in a vegetable garden, they are very fond of kale. So possibly you could plant kale.
That's a great suggestion. I think any kind of biological treatment is always better than using chemicals. So
and safer soap can be effective too.
Oh, good. That's a good.
Let's see, any other questions from folks? Let's see, we've got, yes, aphids are food for many predatory and beneficial insects like ladybugs. So maybe not working so very hard to get rid of all of them, but maybe some general management can be helpful. Thanks for that, Amy. Amy and Manon gave a talk on pollinators last week for us, and talked quite a bit about aphids and
they're pretty,
maybe living with aphids a little bit. So
no, thanks for that, Amy. And if other folks have other suggestions, I would love to hear them.
While we're waiting for those suggestions to roll in, somebody asks, what is the best method for removing Kentucky bluegrass?
That's a good question. We at one point we had kind of a YouTube video, so kind of several ways you could do it. It really depends on the timing. Laying newspaper down, over the course of a season will definitely knock back the grass. I kind of like the physical labor, so I just take, a pickaxe and just start ripping it out. But if you have a large amount, you could also just buy big tarps and just press it that way. And then removal is real easy. There is the burn-in technique, but as we talked about, fire season is longer and showing up earlier. So definitely don't do it on a windy day. Check with your local municipality for regulations for burning. I think most municipalities are not allowed to do that. So, but really the tarp method or the newspaper method, and the newspaper method, it will break down eventually. So, and kind of, just kind of work its way out as well. So those are just a couple of methods.
How effective are sod removing equipment?
It's real effective. I think you could probably rent it from some of the places around. I haven't used it myself. I know of a friend who has, and yeah, you could do some quick work with a sod remover. I don't know what the prices are, but yeah, I think that would be another great alternative.
Thank you. Any other questions? I bet you've all got a whole bunch just sitting in the back of your mind. So, well, maybe not. Maybe Ryan, you could close by just talking
Yeah.
a little bit about that category for the trout-friendly yards and what people have to do to become trout friendly, just as a reminder, because that was the first thing you talked about during your
Oh
talk,
yeah.
and several people weren't here at that time.
Sure.
And while Ryan's finding that, somebody comments that the roots are still there after sod cutting, and they did come back over time. So something to be aware of, that could be a follow-up problem.
Yeah. Thanks for that. That was great. So yeah, here's kind of the basic certification to qualify for the trout friendly program. Really just 5 of them in 3 categories: conserving water, reduce chemical use, and try to incorporate native and drought tolerant plants. And these are all real basic things I think that we could all do. And really, this is very basic, but once you join the program, and then we provide, the newsletters, we'll provide the on-site visit, and just provide more education and more ways that you can become more trout friendly. So with conserved water, try not to water during the hottest part of the day to reduce evaporation. Know what your soil conditions are so you could water appropriately. And really, the idea behind that is you want to try to not water your lawn daily or even every other day, and try to get it down once and twice a week. To reduce chemical use, let your grass grow taller. Raise your mower blade to a minimum of 3 inches. This will help with grass not soaking up so much water, but also help with not letting weeds get established. So you'd have to, reduce chemical use. And we don't try not to promote using herbicide, but if you have to, just spot spray. Don't broadcast spray across your lawn. Just really key in to where those weeds are. And then, of course, any chance you get, try to incorporate native or drought tolerant plants to reduce water.
So someone would go to the website, fill out an application, drop it by, mail it, whatever, and then one of you folks would come out for a site visit. Is that correct? And sort of verify that's what. Sounds like you just have a conversation really about
Yeah.
their management practices and.
Yeah, don't be scared by it. It's not, we don't, if we go there and your grass is, shorter than 3 inches, it's not like we're gonna not let you in the program. Like I said, top of my talk, it's a educational outreach program. The more people we get in, the more signs we get out onto people's yards, the more the program spreads and people become educated. But yeah, you could go onto this link here. We do have a web form, and you could fill that out. I'll get an email notifying that, and then I would contact the person and try to set up a time to go out and certify the yard, and just also provide other recommendations so you can maybe become more trout friendly.
Great, thank you. And I notice on the sign it's conserves water, includes native plants, reduces pesticides. So it's not real strict. It's not a harsh
No, I mean,
categories.
right. We just, we want to, you don't really have success in doing a education program if you start excluding people, right? So, we want to educate people and try to get them to change their practices to, becoming and following the trout-friendly pest management practices.
Well, it's a great program, and I don't see any more questions. I don't see that anyone's unmuted themselves to ask a one-on-one question for you. So if no one else has any other questions, someone's just saying great information, thanks. Thanks a lot. So,
Yeah,
and thank
yeah, it
you,
was fun.
Ryan. I will be, just a reminder, I will send out those landscaping guidelines, both of the ones that Ryan mentioned, the one pager and then the more comprehensive one, also the plant list, and I'll also include that trout friendly link that Ryan has right here. So you kind of have a package to launch into the program. I know I'm really looking forward to, I've got my application ready, and I'm ready to hand it off to Ryan and get one of these beautiful signs in front of my house. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, everyone. And thank you, Ryan, for taking the time to share this great program with us.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for thinking of me on this Earth Day and the Land Trust on giving this talk. And if anyone has more questions, feel free to call the office 208-788-3947. And thanks to the Haley Public Library for having these talks. I think it's really important. Get the word out about this program and, you know, the pollinator talk that happened just before this one. So thank you.
Yeah, great. Well, happy Earth Day, everybody. Good night.
Have a good night.